Good morning. It's so good to see your beautiful face,
Thank
Shannon.
you. So good to see you, Tamara. It's been a little
Oh,
while
thank
since
you.
we've done
It
a
has
podcast.
been.
Yeah.
It has been. And let me just tell you, listeners, if you are only listening, I want to encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, Hopeful Hearts Ministry YouTube channel, because you can see the beautiful Shannon Carr, but you can see the
Well,
beautiful
thanks.
backdrop behind her because she is in Colorado at her family's camp. And the view is stunning.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
we were
almost looks
talking for a
fake.
little bit. It does. It looks like one of those green
Uh,
screen,
right.
fake backgrounds that you can choose on Zoom, and, it's so beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, so beautiful. So, I'm so glad to see you, and, um, I see you've got dogs walking in the background. I have a dog sleeping on the chair back here.
Right.
So, it's just that day. So,
Yeah.
um so we wanted to get together and talk today about grief, and it's such a heavy topic, but one that is so important in a healing journey, whether you have gone through trauma or abuse um, or not. Grief is something that I don't think we get through life without experiencing grief. I don't think it's possible. And,
Yeah.
um, I think a lot of people rush to try to get rid of grief or get past it
Mhm.
or not feel it because they feel like they're holding on to that loss and that maybe that's shameful or unhealthy. But
Mhm.
I think when we rush to get past the grief, we don't deal with the feelings. And really, when we're grieving, we are honoring and holding on to the love that we
Mhm.
had for that person or that relationship,
Or
um,
that part of you,
or
right?
that
I
part of
mean,
you. Yes.
any kind of tragedy or trauma in life, I
Mm-hmm.
believe elicits an essence of grief because
Yes.
maybe you're losing a part of who you used to be, which may
Mm-hmm.
need to be lost. Maybe
It may
it's
need to
to,
be.
to grow up or to move
Mhm,
forward or to all of our experiences in life, if you allow them, and that's what you and I often
mhm,
talk about in this continued healing journey. But if we can allow all the experiences to grow us, and allow us to keep moving forward, um, that's that positivity, right? And so, but if we
yes,
don't allow ourselves to recognize what grief is or to fully
mhm,
go through the grief process, whether it is having lost someone or having lost an aspect of life because of a
mhm,
specific trauma or tragedy, then we get stuck.
yes,
And we get stuck in that, what I call that woe is me,
mhm.
feeling sorry for myself. And no, nobody ain't got time for that. No, no, I'm just
Mm,
kidding.
mm-mm. I ain't got time for that.
I mean, we all experience it there, so there's no doubt
Right.
about it. I know that we all experience it, but
Well, there's grief of all kinds. I mean, I think a lot
Mhm.
of times we think grief, oh, someone had to die, or our pet had to die, our loved one had to die. But
Mhm.
someone once explained to me that grief is the space between reality and our expectation. So, um,
I like that.
that there's like think of it like a mushroom growing, and the reality is that cap on that mushroom, and expectation is the bottom, but that space between is where we grieve because those two will never meet. And sometimes we have to sit in that space and
Yeah.
say, okay, these were my expectations of how life would look. This was my expectation of how my career would look. This is my expectation of how my family would look, or whatever, whatever
Mhm.
the expectation is. But that space between there and the reality of what is
Mhm.
where grief lives. And if we ignore that space, then we can't ever really touch reality, you know.
Right. Right.
Um, so
I
I
think
had
one
I,
sorry.
no, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go
No,
ahead.
I just because I know that you've lately experienced a lot of
Mm-hmm.
loss, and I want you to be able
Yeah.
to definitely, talk and share about that
Yes.
however that you
Yeah.
feel
Well,
comfortable.
And, we said I kinda joked, not really in a ha-ha way, but the last year was kind of the year of death for you, that you lost
Mm,
several people in your
yeah.
life that had a great deal of meaning to you, and,
Mhm.
just in the last couple weeks, I've had a few, well, 3 very dear friends that have lost a parent, um, and one of those was a person that was very close to me, so, um, when my husband was growing up, his best friend, he spent all kinds of time at his best friend's house. His parents were recently divorced and remarried, and he was 10, 11, 12, and just didn't quite feel like he fit in at home anymore, and so he spent a lot of time with his friend and their family, and so, um, we lost the mom this week. We
Mhm.
called her Big
Mhm.
Mama, and we lost Big Mama, well, last week, but her funeral will be this week, and, um, she was such an integral part of raising my husband, really, from the time he was about 10 until recently. I mean, she just was here a few weeks ago for dinner and just still giving words of wisdom to us. When we moved back to Kingwood, he had moved up to Illinois to meet me. We say that's why he went there. um, but had moved up there. But then when we came back, we lived with her for several weeks. Uh, and it was such an important time of my life because my mom had only died about a year and a half before we moved here. And I had no friends here. I didn't know a single soul other than Chuck. And Big Mama she just took me in. She helped me plan my wedding here. And she taught me how to iron his dress shirts. um, so sweet. And she taught me how to make Tex-Mex food. She taught me how to make enchiladas and um, gooey butter cake. She taught me the Treebeards restaurant gooey butter cake recipe. And one of my favorite memories of her is we had pulled it out of the oven to cool, and somehow it got knocked off the counter and just everything tumped out into the floor. And we scooped it all back up in the pan really fast, and we still ate it because she had mopped that morning, and
Two
we
second
were like,
rule.
right? We were like, "It's fine, scoop it back in, scoop it back in." And her husband came in as we were scooping it back in the pan. He's like, "What are you girls doing?" We're like, it's fine. Nobody can see it. It's fine."
I love that.
Oh, but she was just a precious woman, and we knew she was sick, and we knew it would be coming, but it's still a loss. It's just still a loss, and it's painful, and
Mhm.
that's hard. It's hard because Chuck and I are both grieving her right now, and um, and that's the
And
price that
you
we
and
pay
you
when we love
grieve
someone.
differently. Right.
Yes.
And I guess
Yes,
so
we grieve
it becomes
differently.
hard. Yeah, when you don't
Mhm.
you're both wanting and needing to grieve this
Mhm.
loss and to go through it.
Mhm.
And then, but especially being that it's your husband, your partner, your best,
Right.
best
Right.
friend, the one that,
Right.
and then so he's suffering, but you're suffering. And then it's
Yeah.
like, you know,
Mhm.
do you have time to grieve or do you feel like you have to
Right.
then pick up for everybody else?
Right.
Right.
That, and
Yeah.
that's the balance that we
Mhm.
pay, and when I grieve, as I'm grieving her, I find myself grieving my own mom again,
Mhm.
um, because I think back to how Big Mama stepped in a time of my life when I really needed my mom, and,
Mhm.
planning my wedding and getting started in a new town, and, just getting started as a wife and all of that, and, going shopping for wedding dresses and all those things that I wanted my mom to be there for, and she wasn't.
Mhm.
Um, and I grieved that so much, and but loving Big
Mm-hmm.
Mama because she was there for that. So, um, grief is complicated. It
Yeah.
complicates a lot of our feelings, and I think one of the ironies of grief is that as we are processing our grief, a lot of times it makes us start thinking about the relationship with that person that we had, and um, sometimes the things that we need to talk to them about as we're processing that relationship, it's like, well, we can't because they're not here.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do in those
Right.
moments? How do
Yeah.
we process the emotions and the memories because that person isn't isn't here.
Right.
So,
Right. I know with, the passing of my friend Alana in November, um, it sent me into a different spiral, if you will,
yeah.
just because of her being, my friend of 40 years, knew everything
Mhm.
about me.
Right.
And lately I've had a lot of really great things happen, and she would be like one of the first to call or to talk
Mhm.
about. And so it's essentially like, what do when something happens, what do you do when you want to talk to that person? And
Mhm.
I did write. If you're a writer, if you don't mind journaling, if that is something, if that's where your brain,
Mhm.
left or right brain, I can't remember which one it is.
Mhm. Yeah.
I know that it helped me. I know that it helped me to just kind of write it out, right?
Mhm.
As if I was talking to her, just to say, hey, I just needed, to share this, or
Mhm.
to talk about this. Um, I think that was the other thing for me that, it, and I think I have talked about this in some of our past, or most recent
Mhm.
podcasts, but, I'm back in therapy
Mhm.
because of grief.
Yes.
And that's why I mentioned that even, in the beginning. Sorry, all these flies are flying around me. In the beginning is, you know, I then have a fear, an
Mhm.
irrational fear, because I have suffered so much loss,
Mhm.
on, of people that I love, but also loss in the sense of tragedy in my life and
Mhm.
trauma in my life, that the loss of Alana, who's my age, who went
Mhm.
through a lot of that trauma and tragedy with me.
Right.
She knew what I had gone through. We both,
Mhm.
I lost, my first love in high school to a tragic car accident. She was with me when I found out, and she was best
Mhm.
friends with him too. And like, so we
Mhm.
all went through that together. So now I deal with this, fear, this inability to see forward in my life,
Mhm.
like to want to grasp. I shouldn't say it that way. I want to grasp what's ahead of me.
Yeah.
I do look forward what's ahead of me, but there was a
Mhm.
moment where I was stuck, like,
Yeah.
well, is there anything good, right? What if
Mhm.
I die tomorrow? What if Russ dies tomorrow? What if my kids die?
Yes.
What if what if something else bad happens to me, and I start
Mhm.
getting caught in that? And I know logically that it's irrational. Like, there's that,
Yeah.
we all have that logical side of us,
Mhm.
that can say, I know that this is irrational. I know
Yeah.
that, that life
Yep.
has to continue. But we all have to just admit that there's going to be that irrational part of us.
Mhm.
And sometimes we need to work through that. Sometimes we need to talk
Yes.
through that. And I think I talked about that after coming out of my surgery, that I thought I was going to die. I think
Yes.
that's when I talked
Right.
about it, and
Mhm.
that I feel better. But I will tell you, coming up here, I won't say the name of the show. It's on Netflix, because I don't want to ruin it for anybody, because I do believe it's good. I'll tell you after, and I hope
Okay.
that you have seen it or not. But there is a mini series show. It's pretty
Mhm.
recent. Only was added a couple of months ago, and I kept being told by people, you should watch that. You should watch that.
Mhm.
So I listened to it driving up here. It's a 16-hour drive. So, my bonus daughter Laurel was with me, and she was watching it, but I was listening. And, she then was sleeping. This is like at 5 in the morning, and I'm on the last
Mhm.
episodes. And I will say, you fall in love with this couple, and the story is just kind of about their growth together in life. It's just, I don't want to
Mhm.
give too much away, but in the end, right when everything is perfect, right when everything falls into
Mhm.
place, he dies. And I just started bawling. I just
Mhm.
started bawling because that's my fear, right?
Yeah.
It's my fear that things will be so good, things are good, right? Things work out well, and
Mhm.
then you have to and then it kept, I thought it would just end there, but no, then you suffer through his grief with him, which I'm glad that
Ugh.
they did that. I'm glad that they
Yes.
did a few
Yes.
other episodes to
Mhm.
show that, yes, that first year sucks, like, and
Mhm.
his reaction to that grief of that loss, and the what ifs, and all the years that maybe I didn't do right by her, I should have done right by her,
Mhm.
all the things, right, that
Yeah.
we go through.
Mhm.
And then it shows then the next year of, he's better, not 100%, but he's a,
Mhm.
so it just kind of shows that progression.
Mhm.
But the whole time I just kept crying, just kept crying. But
Yeah.
it was a good cry, just because I thought, we can't escape grief. And I guess that's where I want to end my portion of this, that you
Mhm.
could pick back up. But we can't
Mhm.
escape it. I
No,
mean,
we cannot.
we're not meant to live forever, if we're going to talk about grief in that
Mhm.
sense. And that's why we have to enjoy and embrace the life that we have in this moment,
Mhm.
and not allow life circumstances, past traumas, things done to us, to keep us from living, to keep us
Yeah.
from embracing what we have. Um, and unfortunately, as we get older, as I'm now on into the next century, or I'm just kidding, as I'm like ending the, sorry, I'll be 51 here soon. No, I mean, more and more people are going to go. It's just the reality for me, right? I just
Just
hate
said
to
that
say
to
that
some
like that,
friends
but
on a text thread. I have a text thread with uh 3 girlfriends that I grew up with, like from kindergarten on. And we just said that yesterday. I'm like, we have reached the age where all of our friends' parents are dying. Our parents are dying, and more of us will be dying. I mean, I hate to sound morbid like that, but that is the reality of this world is,
Mhm.
we know that that is not what God intended when he created the world and he put man on it, that he wanted communion with us forever. But because we live in a sinful world, death is part of that. Death and grief are part of that. And, we have hope, you and I,
Mhm.
and, followers of Christ, we have hope of eternity with him because
Eternal
of that
life.
promise. Yes. Um, but that doesn't make the pain here
Mhm.
any
Any less.
less.
Mhm.
You know, for anybody that watches The Chosen, um, I've
Mhm.
been watching the 4th season on the app, and I'm not giving anything away because it's in the Bible.
Don't.
So
Are you?
it's
That's kind of
it's
funny
in the
though.
Bible, but when Lazarus dies
Yeah. Yes.
and
The true grief of that.
the true grief there, like we see that Jesus wept, and
Yeah.
they show that scene so beautifully on The Chosen, with Jesus going there. And Jesus knew, going to the house of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, he knew that he was going to bring Lazarus back to life, that was the whole plan. He still grieved. Everyone there was grieving, and he was grieving the fact that they were grieving. He was grieving the fact that he knew he was going to have to die on the cross soon. He knew, and he was also grieving the fact that he had been teaching these people for 3 years. He had been with these people trying to teach them a message, and they still didn't get it. And that's a whole other kind of grief, when you try and you try and you try and something
And it
doesn't
just doesn't work.
happen, when people just don't understand. And again, it's that space between reality and expectation. And
Mhm.
but they show that so beautifully. And they also show, the anger of the people, like, why didn't you come sooner? Why, you could have saved him, why didn't you do that? And that's a whole other grief of, why did this happen to me?
Mm.
Why do bad things
Why
happen
is
to good
one person
people.
saved? Right.
Yes.
Why is one person saved and
Yes.
the other not?
Exactly.
Only God knows what their plan is, or what maybe
Right.
the work that they need to continue to do
Right.
to fully fulfill their
Mhm.
purpose. Right. I,
You know,
yeah.
I have had people say to me, because it's been 27 years since my mom's suicide. Um, and there are days that I can talk about it freely and have no problem, but there are days that it just about takes me under, the grief. And so I've had people say, "Well, why do you still talk about it?" Or people that feel suicide is a such a shameful thing that you shouldn't talk about it. Um, which I don't believe. I think that it's a mental health issue, and we've talked about this many times, and we have to talk about it to prevent it from happening with other people.
Mhm.
But the reason I talk about my mom and her story is because I am her legacy. I am her
Right.
voice. I can honor her life, not her death or the way she died. I'm not honoring the way she died, but I'm honoring her life when I talk about her and I tell her story. Even when I tell the story of how she died, um, and the hopelessness that she was feeling in that moment, I can talk about the story of her salvation, and that I know that she's with Christ because she was a child of God and she was a believer, but was struggling with mental health in that time. And so the way I show my love for her now is in that place of grief. I have to continue to tell her story. Um, I have to be her voice. So, you know, our little tagline with Hopeful Hearts Ministry is I have a voice. And I feel that doubly. It's that I have a voice, but I'm also carrying her voice. And that's that's my journey. That's my job.
Right. I've often been, as I have suffered through different losses in
Mhm.
life, I've kept connecting and picking up the same kind of
Mhm.
concept of, you know, we're 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 no, we're not going to have them here alive with us anymore,
Mhm.
but we're meant to take the best part of them that
Yes.
affected us, that grew
Yes.
us, that
Yes.
and continue that within ourselves,
Mhm.
right? That is the way to
Yeah.
honor those that we love, is to be that best part of them and allow them
Yes.
to leave behind that legacy. Not
Mhm.
any one of us is perfect. Not any one of us has 100% of great aspects of our lives, right?
Right.
So if I
No.
were to go, I wouldn't want you to take on all
Mhm.
my bad stuff. I'd rather
No.
know that
Okay.
you're,
Uh-huh.
living out the good, living out the
Mhm.
wanting to help others, to,
Yeah.
encourage people to have their voice, whatever that is,
Yes.
right? And I
Yes.
think that's what's beautiful, in my
Mhm.
opinion, that you are doing with your mother. Because when I
Mhm.
hear it from you talking about your mom and her legacy, I
Mhm.
mean, she was a good mother.
Mhm.
She was a great mother.
Yeah.
She loved you. She adored you.
Mhm.
There was many things
Yeah.
that I hear from you that
Mhm.
you now perpetuate and continue with your
Mhm.
own children and
Mhm.
with your life with them, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that's the beauty of it. We're not meant
Mhm.
to focus on the ugly of
Mhm.
the passing, or
Yeah.
however that may have been. Um,
Mhm.
and I get, please don't get me wrong, like, this,
No.
watching this series made me go even
Mhm.
cry again for the loss of my
Of course.
boyfriend in high school, that just the
Mhm.
tragedy of his young life
Yes.
being gone. And
Mhm.
he had signed on to play basketball with Baylor, and he was,
Mhm.
almost 7 foot tall. Like, he really
Mm.
would have gone on to do
Yeah.
great things. And I
Mhm.
could think about that, and I could think, wow, be so stuck in that loss, stuck in that
Yes.
tragedy of, oh my gosh, how horrible, this young life didn't
Mhm.
get to continue. However, what he left, look, I'm going to start crying. What he
Mm.
left behind, I'll never forget. Just a few months before he passed, he was very Christian, and he had said to me, um, he had said, I'm not afraid
Mm,
of when I die. I
mhm,
know where I'm going. He had said that to me. And I think that's, as
mhm,
a young life, as a young girl, that's what struck me. And, it bothered me in the sense of, oh my gosh, like, did he predetermine
mm.
what was
Right,
going to happen? And I
right.
absolutely don't believe that. What I
Yeah.
do believe now, as a,
Mhm,
an adult who can really think about this,
mhm.
he knew God. He knew where he was
Yes.
going, and he was leaving behind that legacy.
Mhm,
He left behind many aspects of just his young, 17-year-old life. But the fact that at that age that he could be confident in
mhm.
where he was going, wow.
Right.
And just today I lost a dear friend. I didn't get to tell you this, Tamara, but it's
Oh,
a woman that I've
gosh.
known from church for a long time. And her name is Barb Isom. I'll go ahead and say it. And she has been a huge supporter
I
of
was gonna
Hopeful
say,
Hearts,
oh,
and big supporter of Hopeful Hearts. And she is just one of the most caring, loving women. And she went through bladder cancer many, many years ago, survived, then went through thyroid cancer, survived, and then now cancer retook, and it unfortunately was the end for her. But the message that her daughter shared today at at 5:30 in the morning, mom became an angel. We are so at peace. There's no tears, just happiness because she is where she belongs. And I believe that. And that is a legacy that she left behind. And what I loved about her is that she was so kind, so
mhm.
caring, so giving. And it wasn't that she gave thousands of dollars to Hopeful Hearts.
Right.
They gave what they could. And
Mhm.
I knew that that
Mm.
was, it's
Yeah.
kind of like in the Bible where, a kid gives, their
Mhm.
last piece of bread. Like,
Right.
they
Right.
they give what they
Yeah.
could. But I knew that we were always in her prayers, and she was very
Yes.
strong
Mhm.
intercessor. And um yeah, so I mean, yeah, I just wanted to mention
Yeah.
her
Oh,
too,
I'm
and
so
just to
glad you
know,
did.
like, yeah,
I'm so glad you did.
my heart is sad, but it's also
Mhm.
happy, right?
Yeah.
That a woman that did so much on this earth to help those in need, and then now and suffered, truly suffered, and physically, and then now she'll be exactly, you know, free of that,
Mhm.
and be
Free of the
happy,
pain and
and
suffering and yes, all of that.
yeah,
Just to be in
yeah,
the presence of Jesus forever is,
yeah,
I mean, that's the goal. That's the goal.
yeah.
There's also a part of grief that we talk about with people that when you haven't had a good relationship with someone or you wanted a good relationship, but um, because of abuse or, traumatic events, there was pain there. And then, so there's can be a grief of just the loss of that relationship when you have to cut free from someone or, um, you have to cut ties. So that can be like a death. Um, when someone's going through a divorce, that can be like a death. It's the death of that dream of what could have been, what should have been. Um,
Yeah.
but it's even harder, I think, when that happens, but then someone dies because you're not able to, there's no chance anymore of reconciliation in any way. At going through a divorce, you can at least forgive and maybe come to a friendship. I
Mhm.
know you and your ex, it was a rough
Mhm.
divorce, but you are friendly now and
Mhm.
you've made peace with each other in that way. But if someone dies before that chance of peace and reconciliation can come together,
Mhm.
sometimes I think it makes the grief even harder. because there's so many things. There's always things that are left unsaid, but when there has been no reconciliation, sometimes it makes it harder. And I like what you said earlier about journaling or writing the letter, because
Mhm.
that is a huge help. And even I want to encourage our listeners, like, even if you aren't the type of person to journal or write, there is something powerful about writing a letter
Mhm.
to that person. And whether you ever give it to that person or not, or whether you can give it to them or not, I wrote lots of letters to my mom over the years, and I would throw them away, or I'd throw them in the fire, or I got rid of them, but a lot of them. Um, but there is a healing process that comes in us when we can write down. We can write that person's name, and we can write about the incidents that happened, both the good and the bad. We can write about how we wish things would have been, um, what we could do better in the future, to be a better person ourselves, just kind of writing that whole process out. It's so therapeutic. It's
Mhm.
so good for anybody. So, um,
Even
that is
if
one piece. Yeah.
yeah, even if it is like, for instance, when my grandfather, my first
Mhm.
abuser, passed
Mhm.
away, I was in the process of wanting to see him, to be able to say and have my voice and
Mhm.
say, you hurt me. Not that I expected necessarily an
Right.
apology from him. I just needed that strength for myself, right? To say, this is
Yes.
what you have done and you've hurt me, and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. But he passed away literally on
Mhm.
my journey to go see him. He passed away.
Yeah.
And this the same still held for that. Like, I'd had to write it out. I had to say what I wanted to say. And then what helped
Mhm.
me even more than in the forgiveness and that letting go, um because I knew ultimately, my gosh, ultimately he's meeting with God the Father. But
Right.
that's when it really struck me very hard, because we're all sinners. And when in our minds, yes,
Mhm.
one sin could be greater than the other. Murder is
Right.
greater than,
Right.
stealing a candy bar or something.
Mhm.
However, but sin to God is sin.
It's sin is
And
sin.
if I'm ever meant to then pass and see God and be truly forgiven and welcomed
Yes.
with open arms, I have to believe that he has a right to in that moment atone for
Mhm.
all of it.
Mhm.
And I had a spiritual director in that moment tell me, like, he is the cleanest soul that he possibly could be. And either he'll make that choice, right? Whether he'll be forgiven or not, or
Mhm.
whatever. And that's not in my hands. Like, it literally was,
Mhm.
that's no longer in my hands. He's not
Right.
here. And
There's
that
nothing we can
helped
do about
me
it.
absolutely. And it helped me so much to just let that go. Like, I'm giving that to God. And from that point, there's been other situations or other people that have really hurt me or harmed me. And I have to think back to that and say, you
Mhm.
know what? All I can do is the best that I could do for me. And I have to
Yes.
focus on how best to better myself and to
Mhm.
not perpetuate anything that was wronged by me or done to
Mhm.
me. And I have to trust God in all ways and hand them over
Mhm.
to God. And that is what a journey of forgiveness is. And it's a journey.
Yes.
But anyway, I wanted to point that out and that aspect of grief,
Mhm.
because I know that there have been people that have never gotten to, somebody harmed them earlier in life. They've never really
Mhm.
gone through it. Now they are going through their healing process, but the person has
Yeah.
passed and they don't feel like that they can have
Mhm.
closure.
Right.
And you can. It's spiritual closure,
Mhm.
it's mental, spiritual closure,
Mhm.
but you can.
Yes.
And it is writing. I was working with somebody
Mhm.
with Hopeful Hearts yesterday afternoon. She does not like to write.
Mhm.
She'll do everything she can to keep from writing.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I get that. I get that there's
Yeah.
many of
I
you
do
that are
too.
like, that's the last thing I want to do is
Mhm.
to write or whatever. And
Mhm.
so then if you absolutely will not write, then I just encourage you to sit, wherever you feel comfortable and at peace, and then just to talk. talk it out,
Mhm.
but get it out,
Say it out
right?
loud. Do a
Get it
voice
out,
recording on your phone. Get it out.
right?
And then
Get
after you
it out.
record it, delete it because,
Delete it. If you don't want
that's
anybody to hear it, that's
nope.
fine.
There's something
Yeah.
good about putting those words out there and, speaking them out loud takes power away from the darkness inside. We always say, light darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. And so when we have those secrets or we have that pain and
Mhm,
it's kept in the darkness, then it can fester there and grow. And it's
mhm,
I think about mold or like mildew, when living in
mhm,
Houston, everything mildews so quickly. And you think about like mildew in the shower. And if it doesn't have the light there, and if it's not
mhm,
given airspace, that
mhm,
mildew will grow so quickly. It's just like
mhm,
everywhere.
mhm.
Um, and that's the same for that pain that's inside us. If we don't bring it out to the light where it can breathe and be dried out, then it's just
Right.
gonna fester. Um, for me, the way my brain works with learning and with expressing, it's good for me to write because it's like it's in my head. It goes through my hand and I see it on the paper. And
Yep.
then I really love to tear it up, um, or throw it
Or
in the
burn it.
fire or so yes, because
Yeah.
there is a healing aspect of that for me to like it's like I'm releasing it and then I'm seeing it go. Um, but again, I understand that not everybody is that way, but I really think it's important to either write it or say it out loud or both. Um, because it allows you to bring air and light to it, and
Yeah.
that's needed.
Absolutely.
It's so
Absolutely.
needed.
Mm,
So, this is part of what we do with Hopeful Hearts Ministry. Um, we want to help survivors become thrivers, and that's
mhm,
surviving all the things that you go through in life.
mhm,
Um, and we are that. We are survivors and we are thrivers, and we want to help you be a thriver in your own life. So if you have questions about Hopeful Hearts Ministry, you can go to hopefulheartsministry.org and learn more about what we do. You can always reach out to us through there to contact us. Um, our email is there. Um, you can find our latest podcast on there. You can listen to us on Spotify or Apple. And again, you can watch us on YouTube.
oh,
We're working on some events for the fall. We're doing a book club this summer, but all these things you can find out on our website, or you can go to our Instagram page,
mhm.
Hopeful Hearts Ministry, or Facebook page, and find out more about us there. Shannon, I'm just glad to have
Yeah.
had this time with you in your
I
beautiful
know.
surroundings
I'm
there.
glad that it worked out. I know that we were
We
having
did,
some internet issues, but
we did,
God
but
came
this
through and it worked out.
God came through and worked on all of it, so we were able to
Yeah.
get this out and record. So um, I'm just,
If we
yeah,
can, just because I can do
yeah.
this for anybody watching on YouTube, I'm going to
Mhm.
walk around real quick. I want to show y'all
Oh
the
yes,
place. It is our goal that
yes.
as we, keep growing and doing this, that
Mhm,
it is a goal of ours, mine, to have a retreat up here in
mhm.
Colorado.
Yes.
And so I just want to show you real quick, see if we
Mhm.
can, uh, this is our little fire pit
Ah.
area. Can y'all see that?
Oh, yes.
And I want to show
So
the
beautiful.
river that's right behind us. Hold on. Hopefully it's not freezing on y'all. Can y'all see that?
No, I see it. I see it. It's beautiful.
It's so
So
heavy. And then
beautiful.
real quick, let me just show you. Of course, we have a
Mhm.
main house and then
Mhm.
we have other little cabins
Little
too.
cabins.
Yeah,
I love it. I love
I
it.
know.
So we had a
Anyway,
Hopeful
so
Hearts retreat in the fall that was more local around the
yes.
Houston area up at Lake Livingston, and we are working on planning another retreat for this fall that will be local, but
Yes.
put this on your prayer list, folks. If you are, if you follow us and support us and want to be more involved, put this the first thing we're asking for. Just support the retreats that we're doing, and that we'll
Yes.
figure out a way to do one in Colorado.
One in
Um,
Colorado would be
would,
fantastic.
would be amazing. So, all right. Well, thank you all for listening, and thank you, Shannon, for being here with me today, that we could share this message
Absolutely.
with everyone. All right, folks, we will talk to you next time.